Okay, so we're going to be putting together this Mario Brothers birthday cake topper. Now, I was inspired to do this one by someone that I come across on Instagram, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, so I'll put the link to their page in the description below. So this was a prototype, to be honest. I don't know anyone that's designed, so I just kind of made it up, and it needs a lot of work. So I've got all my pieces here printed out. I have done the design slightly different to that first original, so it works out. So I like to have everything ready before I start. My CRICUT adhesives is my favourite go-to in terms of glue, and in particular those sticky, what are they called, like foam sticky adhesives, or foam mounts, that's the one. So I go through a lot of that, but I like to have everything ready before I start because it's a really lengthy process anyway, so you don't really want to be having to get up and try and find things. So what I like to do initially is put together all the fun stuff, all the stuff that goes on that last layer, because then I feel like I've actually accomplished something. And it's a really great way as well to have those things done, so then when you get to those final layers built up at the end of making that topper, you can place them on top and see that everything's going to fit. I'm sure if you've been doing CRICUT for a while, or even if you've just started, you'll probably already know that somehow things can move by the time you go to put it together, unless it's just me. So anyway, I'm using this CRICUT glue. It's got like a little foam like applicator thing, which I really loved, until you'll see halfway through this video I literally just broke it off the stick. I'm a bit rough and ready when it comes to things like that, so I'm not surprised that I broke it. But anyway, it's got a little nib applicator as well, which I ended up using for the end of the video, and that worked really just as well. That glue dries super quick, which I really like. So I'm just putting together those layers for the number 9. I did a few layers for that, and you know, I've used some bits of glitter paper that I got. Well, the majority of the papers and cardboards that I've used in this cake topper, I actually just got from a cheap throw-out bag from my local craft store. I think it was, you know, a massive bag of scrap pieces of cardstock and glitter paper and mirror cardboard and things like that, and it was about $5. So it's always worth going to your local craft store and finding those things, because you can just, it's so easy to use them. So that's the number 9 done. Now, there are so many layers to this, and I think all up the entire thing took me about 2 hours to put together, thereabouts. I mean, I don't rush. The majority of this video though is I'm going to speed it up and then slow it down, and hopefully you don't get too much whiplash from watching me put this together. But once it looks really intricate when you look at the final design, but when you can see it broken down, oopsie, see what I did there? Sorry, that glue works super quick, and I had actually glued him on there slightly crooked, so I'm just trimming it now. But I thought that I had enough time to lift him up and reposition him, and I didn't. So there is actually like a tiny little crease that I kind of ripped the paper, but that's okay, because at the end I just cover that thing up with a little star sequins, because if you make any mistakes, cover it with glitter or sequins. That's the rule for me. Anyway, I'm not sure what the original point was that I was trying to make, but if we're looking at gluing these things down, I like to glue on the cardstock, because these guys, I've printed them on gloss paper, just out of my normal printer. They come out really good. They're not too glossy, they're quite nice, but the thing is, they're still paper, so I found that if you put the adhesive on the paper and then try to stick it on the card, you kind of get this warped effect because you've essentially wet the paper. So instead, I now put the adhesive on the cardstock and then place the paper on top. It just gives it a much nicer finish. So here's that foam, those foam adhesives from CRICUT. Sorry, Express It. Get it right. Anyway, they're fantastic. Like, I go through so much of that making these things, and look, that's only what, 3 layers, and look how effective that looks. Love it. Anyway, okay, so we're going to move on to the star. Again, only a couple of layers, but you know, really, really effective, particularly with that mirror cardstock. That is really, it's my favorite. It looks so beautiful behind stuff. See, look at that. Ooh, look at that shimmer. Okay, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna fly through a lot of these as quick as possible, because honestly, these are probably the most time consuming and most tedious part of the entire thing, because you have to do every single letter just to be able to get that really nice 3D effect. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know if I said this before, but I like to have, whenever I'm doing any design, I like to make sure that I print out what the design is. I just use the snipping tool that's on my computer to snip out what the design is, and then print it out so then you can see while you're putting it together. Now, the reason I was showing that letter P and that silver pen is because for some reason that particular cardstock, the red, and I'm pretty sure the green, yeah, when it cut, it had the white edge, and I really don't like that. So not that it looks much different on camera because it looks exactly the same, but I did along the edges with the silver pen just so then you could see it looked more metallic rather than just white cardstock. So lesson learnt. I mean, that was still a bit of scrap cardboard that I got from my local craft store, but I don't think I'll use that again because it's not very nice. And then I'm using a lot of glue and not wearing gloves, and so it's a mirror effect, and so I just didn't like the effect of using that type of cardstock. Anyway, here's the fun part where it all starts to look like it's coming together, those letters. So this one is actually, I've made this one for a lady whose son is turning 9. So little Toa is turning 9 and he likes Super Mario Brothers, and his mum actually reached out to me on Facebook after putting this post on the CRICUT Australia Facebook page. So if you're in Australia and you're a CRICUT crafter, make sure you join that page. I put one post on there and everyone was just so supportive and interested in what I'd made, which was this Super Mario Brothers cake topper. And so that's what's actually prompted me to make this tutorial video. So if you're watching this, thank you so much. And if you're from that page and you encouraged me, thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, thank you to everyone watching this who is putting up with the fact that this is the first video I've ever made, and it does actually feel quite awkward doing a voiceover, and how people do videoing and editing all the time is beyond me. But I'd really like to do more of these, so I like taking ideas and being able to replicate or coming up with new things. So I have designed one at the moment, an Avengers one for an adult birthday cake. So that should look good. Oh, look, doesn't that look great? Once it's all together, it looks beautiful. Oh, okay, so there's a bit of a boo-boo that I did here. I didn't measure those coins, both of them at the same time, against the black background. So you see here, I think, oh yes, no, I've done that right. And then I get the other one and it doesn't quite fit. And that's where I realise I messed up. And clearly didn't learn my lesson from trying to rip Mario off the backing using that glue. Like I said, it sets super quick, which is a blessing and a curse, honestly. So not ideal that I just whipped that off the card. But anyway, it still works out. It still looks super effective. You can't tell that I've done it. But look, fingers crossed I've learned that lesson. So that's why it's always good if you've got multiple pieces, layer them on top and make sure that everything goes with everything before you put glue on them, because otherwise you'll be reprinting and recutting, and of course that's doable, but you know, it's not ideal and it's just super frustrating. Anyway, so here's Bowser. I've only done him as that one single layer. I just kind of wanted him to sit in the background. All right, now this bricks that I did in Design Space, they all printed out together. I did attach, and I'm still learning how to use all of this stuff. So I know I've probably done something not the right way, but whatever. Look, it all works out. I just glued them all on individually because it cut them individually, but it did print them together. So anyway, it is what it is. The piranha plant, somehow I lost or didn't print out, or sorry, didn't cut the black backing for that, so we'll sort that out later. But right now I'm gluing the background of the shaker onto a piece of black card just to give it a bit more stability. It is going to be on this other card, but anyway, and you'll see the holes there for the little lights. And I did make sure that they fit through. I have measured them, so I just keep that. I know what that measurement is for any of these that I do that have lights in them. Now, before I go and glue anything, I'm taking my own advice and making sure that everything layers up properly, and then I've got a really good idea in my head of which layer is going to go where. Like I said, that first one that I made, I actually I didn't do the bigger outline as a layer, and I just found that it didn't have enough stability on the edges, and so kind of drooped down. So that's why I did this design a little bit different, to give that structure all the way around, because those 3D pieces are quite heavy, and you want it to sit really nicely. So all I'm doing here with this is using that Express It foam tape. When I'm using the black, I like to use the black tape because it just hides everything. And really these layers, you want to have enough lift, so then you're going to have room for those lights inside there, and also your glitter bits and whatever else you put in there. But those lights, they do need a bit of room once they're inside, you know, that hole that we've made in the backing for them to go into. So yeah, I haven't quite yet figured out a better way of putting them in. I'm sure there is definitely better ways, but I am just kind of teaching myself as I go along. Like most of us that have Cricuts, I'm sure, you know, watching tutorials on YouTube and getting ideas from people. But I mean, honestly, I'm realizing now that the possibilities are really endless. Once you understand the concept of how to put it together, you can really make anything, which is exciting. I'm pretty creative. I like to, you know, get the creative juices flowing and think about what I can make next. All right, so just putting that first layer on there and just using glue to stick that next bigger shadow layer on. Now, what I do learn after doing this layer is that I really need to put down the foam adhesive first before I go and put the glue around the circle, because by the time I've finished doing this, that glue is just about dry. And that again is another reason why I absolutely love the Express It brand. It just works, and it does dry so quickly, which is brilliant, particularly when you're doing layered projects. You want it to dry pretty quick, so then you can move on and get it done for as quickly as possible. So here we go, a little bit of a repeat. I'm pretty sure this is sped up a bit more because it is pretty tedious. You can see pretty clearly here what I'm doing, and I'm not using big chunks of that adhesive foam either. I'm cutting those 1 centimeter little squares, down half, most of it, just to try and utilize as much of that foam as I can and not waste it. Yeah, so there we go, just testing out that the lights go in again and seeing how my layers are going. So once I put out the video of how to design this in Design Space, and if you give it a go and print and cut and put this together, you'll know that those lights are actually going to fit in there quite well, because I've tested it for you. It works. There we go. Look at me learning a lesson and capturing it on camera. I did the glue last. Yay. Alrighty, so there it is so far. Now after that, I'm going to put that acetate and glue that onto the first ring. Now you can get acetate sheets. I'm not sure where I got these ones from. I think my partner bought them for me. I was making those resin shakers, and so I was needing acetate sheets. So I'll find out, and I'll put I'll put everything in the description box anyway. So I'll find out where he got them from and put the link down below. Now I've used a few different adhesives for using, for sticking the acetate, and that Express It Powertac glue worked brilliantly. I didn't put too much, so it didn't seep onto the acetate, which is great, and it dried really, really quick, which is great, because that last layer with the acetate, you're wanting it to stay nice and clean, and so you can see through it, and then you're also wanting it to be able to hold all of that glitter in place. And then this one I've just used the other Express It glue just to see, and it worked quite well. And I like this Express It glue for that last glitter ring, just because it's quite fine and I don't want seepage of glue. Whilst it dries clear, sometimes it just looks a bit, it looks a bit skanky on the on the cardboard, and you don't want that. You want it to look really nice. So yep, testing out, looking at it from the side, pushing that, making sure it definitely has enough room to go in there, and clearly it needs just a little bit more room, so I'm just going to put another layer of that foam adhesive just to lift it up a little bit off those lights. So now remember, when you're putting this foam adhesive, you want them to touch all the way along. Don't leave any gaps, because you will have glitter falling out everywhere, and you don't want that. You want that foam around the outside to be nice and snug, so no glitter can come out. Now I'm going to glue these lights in place. Now I'm actually placing a bead of hot glue all the way around the seam of these balloon lights, and again I'll put the link to these in the description. I did just get them from TEMU. They were really cheap. And I'll put the link in the description, but if you want to just go searching for them, they're called balloon lights. Now the bead of hot glue around that seam is great to fix it in place, but I also wanted to make sure, here's me testing it out after I've already glued one in. Anyway, that's a hot tip. test it out and make sure it works before you glue it in place, please. Do as I say, not as I do. Anyway, I want to make sure that those two pieces of those balloon lights aren't going to come apart easily. That's why I'm putting the hot glue in place. In Australia, we have laws around button batteries, and these are operated by a button battery. So, you know, I would not be selling one of these to someone, you know, with these button battery lights to someone who's got small children or, you know, a young child's birthday. You just don't want to risk them getting a hold of one of those button batteries. But again, you see me, I've just put extra glue on the back because I'm a little bit of a worrywart like that. So I want to make sure it's not going to come off, it's not going to come undone, that battery's not going to come out. All right, now before I start gluing anything else, I want to make sure that things are going to sit nice and neatly. I really wasn't happy with Bowser. Somehow when he was cut and he had that extra layer around the outside that, like, I don't know what CRICUT calls it. I can't think now. Like a buffer layer, let's say that, around the outside. It was just really white and it made him look odd on top of that black background. So I just used a Sharpie and just coloured it in to give him some more definition. And I didn't want him to sit too high up. I still wanted him to be lower than that red ring. Now remember that red ring there, I've used foam adhesive to give that lift. I didn't want Bowser to be completely flat, but I didn't want him to be as high as the red ring. So that's why I used the hot glue. So here's the fun part, putting all the glitter and bits and pieces in. Now I realise at the end when it was all done, I could have used more glitter, but I'm still happy with the way that it turned out anyway. I would have loved if those silver circle bits were gold, because they'd look like the little gold rings that's in Super Mario, but that's okay, I'm happy anyway. Now I really like these holographic looking stars. I got them from TEMU as well, and I just like the effect that they give when they're in a shaker that's got those lights. It just, I don't know, it just does something magical. So I'm just taking off that backing for the adhesive foam, and then we're going to pop that on top. So always, it's easier to get that backing off with tweezers, those really sharp tipped tweezers. I was using my fingers at one point. It's just, I don't know, just so tedious. And give it a really, really good shake all the way around once you've got that last layer on. Make sure you don't have glitter coming out anywhere, because you want to be dealing with that if it's coming out now, rather than when you've glued all of your bits and pieces on and you realise you've got a leak, which I have done before in a prototype that I was making and realised I was using the wrong adhesive. Anyway, now I'm going to put on now the brick wall. Now the way that I'm gluing this on, and I'm just making sure everything fits properly and checking my example, but the way that I want this to go on is I want it to sit along that ring at the front, but it needs to have lift up off that back layer. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I'm putting those foam bits on the way that I am, because I'm going to place it there, and then that front bit of the bricks will just kind of balance on top of that, but it'll be fixed in place anyway, because you've got that lift from the bottom. Now I like to, and that's why you'll see me do it, I like to hold it up in front of me and make sure that everything looks lined up. I do have a habit sometimes of things being a little bit crooked, but I did well with this one. Nothing was crooked, which is fantastic. Now, the star, again, I want it to have enough lift off that black background, but I don't want it to have too much lift off the red ring, but I want it to have enough. So I want it to kind of be the closest thing to you. So that's why you'll see I lined it up on top to kind of measure out which part needs which thickness of foam, and then I'm just double foaming those bits from like the top of the, what would be the top of the star. Does that make, hopefully that makes sense. So that way it's lifted from the red ring, but it's got support from that foam adhesive backing from that black background. All right, now I'm just placing things on to make sure everything fits. Somehow, you know, Super Tower seemed to move higher up on the brick wall, I think, or lower down on the brick wall, one or the other, than what it did on my design. But that's okay, as long as you're not fixing things in place without knowing that everything is going to fit where it needs to go. Now, I'm putting Mario and Luigi on straight away, I think mostly because they are the coolest, and they're going to stick straight on top of that acetate. So once they're in place, I just feel like it makes everything a bit easier to get it where it needs to go. But yeah, I think I've not made a lot of designs so far, but this so far is my favorite. I have done a bluey card, so if anyone's interested in seeing how to design and then also put together a bluey card that's got the shaker and also has the lights, let me know, and I'll try and put together a tutorial for that as well, because that was fun. See, look, that looks great once they're on the front. I love it. So look, you can do, when you're layering these together, you can really do them in whatever order you want. Just making sure that you've got in your head how you want them layered. So there is a little bit of thinking involved, but you know, you can just be really creative however you want it to be. There we go. So they're really the top layer. And this little, now what's this little guy called? Goomba? I don't know. Tell me. I can't think of what his name is. I think when I was a kid and I used to play Super Mario, we just called him Little Mushroom Head Man. Anyway, so he's not a big defined layer. I haven't given him a coloured back, like a shiny background or anything. He's just very similar to Bowser. I want him to be there because he looks really cute, and he kind of ties that corner in to the whole design. But he doesn't need to stand out, not like the star and, you know, the number and things like that. So it's really, really starting to come together now. So with that number 9, I'm doing the same as like what I did with the star and the brick wall, is having a look and making sure that I double up, and actually I think I tripled up. Hang on, we'll both find out in a second if I tripled that foam, because I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, see, look, putting it in place to make sure. See how it's still a little bit wonky? So I actually went and put an extra layer of foam to make sure that that number 9 had heaps of support on that edge with the black backing. It just makes everything kind of, you know, have more structure to it and look more professional and neat. Now, so this dude here, somehow, I don't know what happened. I think I mucked something up with the piranha plant in Design Space, and I think either I lost the black cutout or I cancelled the black cutout. Anyway, I'm sure I'll find it when I finally edit my Design Space video. But always an easy fix. Yeah, I think you'll see in a second. I actually just glue the piranha plant onto the black cardstock and cut it out by hand, just because I didn't want to have to go and hook my machine up again and cut one piece out. By this stage, I was a bit like, okay, let's get this done. Let's just get it on there and get it done. Look, these coins, putting them on, they're really easy. Yeah, look, just glue it on cardboard. Again, I love that I love that Express It glue. I'll put the link to everything, or the name and the link if I can, to everything that I've used in the description. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer wherever I can. Yeah, so anyway, this guy he just needed a bit more support with that black backing. And then I did originally, in Design Space, I had an extra layer or an extra offset for the flame. And I thought, oh, it'd be really cool if that flame had, I cut out the mirror cardstock for that flame. And I cut it out and I have it, but it just didn't look right. It kind of just, it looked real clunky. So I didn't put that on. And look, I think it looks fine without it. So yeah, anyway, look at me go with that foam adhesive. Absolute favorite. Look at my little pile of backing strips. Honestly, I use so much of that stuff and it's just brilliant. Now, I think as well, I think I had a little bit of glue or something that I did with that piranha plant, and it just didn't look fantastic. So I actually, like I did with Mario, where I've ripped him a little bit, I ended up gluing some stars on top, and it hides everything. Now that flame, what you can see me doing is I put foam on the big part of the flame, and then I actually just glued the tail of the flame down into the mouth, and it gave it just that little bit more 3D. And I don't know, I just think it looks a little bit more effective. So here I am now, just fixing up all my little mistakes and bits and pieces that I don't think look very good, with some stars, and just gluing them on and sticking them down. All right, so at this point, it's pretty much done. I'm just, you know, being a little bit pedantic and making sure that anything that doesn't look perfect to me, like that tiny little rip on Mario's arm that I'm sure nobody but me would see, anyway, is going to get covered by stars. And look at that. Even without the lights on, isn't that just so sparkly and shiny? Oh my gosh, I love it. Look, that's the backing. I would essentially put an extra backing on that, but I haven't with this one yet, just to hide the back of those balloon lights and also hide these sticks. Now, I am waiting to try and get some of those like swizzle sticks. I don't know what else you call them, like a clear acetate stick. Anyway, I've got these hard gold straws, so for the minute they're going to do the trick, and hopefully it's enough support to hold this up, because it is, you know, it's reasonably heavy. I'm making sure I put plenty of hot glue on there though, just so then those babies don't fall off. Okay, now let's check out what it looks like all done. Thanks so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit like and subscribe to see what I make next. If you've got any suggestions of what you'd like to see me make in the next tutorial, please be sure to leave a comment in the box below. Thanks everyone.